welcome, and I present you a new series, BYOM. And what's this series about? Well, I pick whatever movies in my Blu-ray collection, and I bring it, and I show it. So, this week's pick is Avengers Age of Ultron. Now, why do we pick Avengers Age of Ultron today? Well, the most important thing to note is, this is one of the first Avengers movies I saw in theaters. Well, actually, the first. Now, this is the first Avengers movie I saw in theaters because I grew up as a DC kid. So, I didn't get to see the first movie, I didn't get to see Iron Man. I missed a lot of peak. When this movie came out back in 2015, which already 10 years ago, I was very excited to see these characters team up. Now, like any great sequel, the second movie is usually the best one, just like The Dark Knight. So again, with all these new Marvel movies coming out this year, and with this being the 10th anniversary, I really wanted to talk about this film today. So let's talk about Avengers Age of Ultron. Like I mentioned, this is a sequel to Avengers, but this movie takes directly after place from Winter Soldier, which from all those previous movies, especially Winter Soldier, there's been a lot of destruction going on as the helicarrier came down because, Hydra was battling Steve Rogers, and then Loki came into New York, invaded the city, and destroyed a bunch of stuff. So there's been a lot of chaos going on in a very short amount of time, and the Avengers are kind of panicking about that. But they also got to clean up their mess because the agency that helped form them, which is S.H.I.E.L.D., is corrupted by Hydra. Now, Hydra is like any fascist regime, which they have taken full control, and now Avengers are trying to just stop that. So they begin this movie by going to Sokovia, which Hydra has a base, and they're going to defeat Baron Zemo. Baron Zemo's a scientist, and he's got some stuff cooking up. He had access to all the technology that S.H.I.E.L.D., or I guess the Hydra agents, stole from the first Avengers movie, such as the Scepter, some ships. They got everything. So in the base, we have one of the bigger experiments, which is Wanda and Pietro Maximoff, which they are victims of the Sokovia bombings from a couple of years ago. And that involves Tony Stark's missiles launching from some sort of war conflict and destroying the village. And including in that destruction was Wanda and Pietro's mom and dad, who died there, and they somehow survived. And no, that's not how they got their powers, but they went to the lab in Sokovia, which is currently brewing up those current projects, so they basically volunteered for Hydra. In any low circumstances, you want to make sure that, you're getting some redemption, or you have some mission, some plan. And Wanda and Pietro were getting experimented on, and they eventually got exposed to the Mind Stone. Now, the Mind Stone is very important because that's going to lead to Avengers Infinity War, where all the stones are being collected. And in this movie, it's very important to making certain things that obviously lead to that point. And when they were exposed to the Mind Stone, the two of them get their powers. So Pietro is known as Quicksilver, and Wanda is known as the Scarlet Witch. Or they still call her Wanda, but she's the Scarlet Witch. So when the Avengers go to the base, we see them at their best as they're just kicking some ass and, defeating evil Hydra agents. They do eventually get to Baron Zemo and all the other agents, and, all the other Avengers are just fighting the other characters, and eventually Tony Stark, obviously Iron Man, he goes by himself into the underground base where he sees the ship and all the scepter and all that stuff that Hydra stole from the first Avengers movie and Winter Soldier, etc., etc. When he was there, though, he gets manipulated by Wanda because her powers are to use these illusions and voodoo dark magic to, manipulate people, but obviously she can manipulate reality. But Wanda gives this vision to Tony where he sees all the Avengers dead, which is foreshadowing to Avengers Infinity War and Endgame. So Tony sees some pretty messed up stuff, and it really traumatizes him. And for some reason, Wanda and Pietro just kind of leave him alone. I think they fight a little bit, but they basically get out of there, and we don't really see them for a little bit. Tony recovers the Mind Stone from the Scepter, and he brings it to Avengers Tower, and all seems dandy as the Avengers are gathered at the tower, celebrating, drinking, whatever. But before that, Tony is panicked. He wants to create AI sentient to help fight the world's crimes because, unfortunately, there's a lot of danger out there that humans cannot solve, no matter how many powers you have. Him and Bruce Banner, though, obviously help create that as they're just smart as shit. They do that, creating it through, I think Jarvis's software, yada yada. They basically build Ultron, and Ultron seems pretty cool. Now, he doesn't have a physical body yet. He has this mind in the cloud, and he eventually meets Jarvis's mind, which again is an AI system, and you basically see it through these particles which intersect with each other, and they can access all the world's information. And when Ultron boots up, he sees all the horror of the world, such as the Afghanistan war, all the stuff that happened in the Avengers movies. He basically says, okay, our world's corrupt, let me build my own. And so Ultron ends up crafting a temporary body, and then when the Avengers are partying at the tower, Ultron crashes the party and he tries to kill them, and the Avengers, fight him and kill this body. But because Ultron is this like cloud-based system, he somehow travels throughout the internet through the world's fastest fiber cable, and he ends up getting into the cloud of the Sokovia base, where he ends up crafting another body. And I guess we see Pietro and Wanda again, and they team up and they create this alliance where, they're going to kill the Avengers, they're going to destroy the world. All is bad because, again, all these characters are at their very low lows. And what Ultron's plan is he's going to lift Sokovia up by using vibranium. So he obviously has to go to Wakanda to get access to that from an arms dealer, which is Ulysses. And by doing that, he's going to have Wanda and Pietro kind of do all the dirty work and help, manipulate the Avengers while also, doing some stuff on the side. So, everyone wins in this situation. What Ultron's going to do is pretty insane. And that's why the Avengers need to team up and defeat this dude. Now, let's take a basic look at the star of the show today, which is the Age of Ultron Steelbook. So here's the front cover. It's got the A, like the posters that they put on the Avengers movies. On the side, you can see it says Avengers Age of Ultron. And then on the back, you can see Ultron itself. What a man. When I open this up, you can see, obviously, the Avengers in there. Really cool, right? And then, as you can see here, we have some discs in there. We have a Blu-ray. We do not have a DVD. And then we have a Blu-ray 3D, which... that's from 2015. And then actually, you can see the whole cast of the movie, which that's really cool. And what I like about Steelbooks is them having that interior design. I just want to make sure you see all that. So I pop these babies in. Look at that. Perfect. I really want to talk about the importance of physical media. So obviously, when you're watching a movie via streaming, you have to really rely on the internet. And when something's stored on the cloud, it gets compressed. And what do I mean by that? Well, what you're trying to see, like actual HD or actual 4K, is not actual HD or actual 4K, because again, this is all on a cloud-based system. So Netflix can't run your movies at the most highest quality because servers would crash, and that's physically impossible because it's all wireless based. When you have a direct drive, such as like, a USB drive or whatever it may be, you're going to get a faster connection. It's like data just transfers quicker like that. It's just simple electronics, okay? So when it's cloud-based, obviously, it takes longer to travel because, again, cables, connections, whatever it may be, it's not going to be exactly how you want it to be. So even watching a Blu-ray, which is only, HD, it's still going to look really good. And personally, I have a 4K Blu-ray player, so 4K with a Blu-ray, it's actually going to be like, middle tier. Anything better than I watch on Netflix, though. And what's really important to note about just, collecting Blu-rays is they're very valuable, obviously. This is not a cheap hobby, but also streaming's not cheap either. Now, this movie, brand new, is $25, but used is $15. And I got this as a gift, so I didn't know what I paid, or whatever the person got me it paid. Steelbooks are actually really expensive. They usually cost about $30 brand new. And when it's 4K, yeah, like they could be 30 to 40 bucks, so it can get quite crazy. A lot of people don't have Blu-ray players or DVD players nowadays, so if you have a PS5 with a disc drive, you can watch, Avengers Age of Ultron on the nice little Blu-ray. Now, me personally, I have a PS5 and a Blu-ray player, so, having a physical media setup like that, it's nice. So I can put it in different parts of my house, whatever it may be. But yeah, I really recommend doing the physical media route. Another important thing to note is when you are actually lifting a disc out of here, like I did earlier, you want to make sure that you are grabbing the edges. You do not want to touch the physical thing where the information is written on, if that makes sense. So just don't touch the main part, okay? Just grab the edges so you don't make any scratches or putting any greasy print marks on there. You don't want that. Another thing to keep in mind is you can do the stink of the pink method. I personally don't recommend that because that's pretty freaky, and I think it can sometimes, if you grab your finger in there and it slips out, again, you can rub it on the disc, and again, that's going to just prevent it from playing it properly. Also, when you're taking out the Blu-rays, do not put them on like my couch here or on the ground or anywhere where you can potentially forget it. It can slip under. And if you want to start collecting Blu-rays, it's not too expensive. I think if you go like half price books, you can definitely get like 20 Blu-rays for $100, which that's 20 movies right there that you own permanently. And if you're just getting started, obviously don't just buy movies that you just want to buy just for fun, okay? You got to actually know what you like, and you can't just be buying, When Harry Met Sally on 4K, which I personally would, but it's not worth it, okay? You want to buy movies on 4K that are like action, sci-fi, maybe some horror, or just, your favorite movies, sure. But if you just want to have a physical collection, just go Blu-rays all the way. I don't mind DVDs either. That's going to save you a lot more money, in my opinion. So honestly, if you don't really care for the movie and you just want to own it physically, yeah, just go DVDs. So you can have a DVD collection, and then you can obviously have Blu-rays and then 4Ks. And what my personal favorite is Steelbooks, because they make the movie collecting experience the most premium and also just gives it the best collector's experience. Enough about physical media. Let's talk about why Avengers Age of Ultron works so well. This movie is where you see this team actually work together as a team in the best way possible, and afterwards, obviously with Civil War and Infinity War and all that things that happen, they are very segregated and it's hard to come back from there. Obviously with Endgame they reunite, but at that point you got a million different characters there. Now I love Infinity War and Endgame, but obviously with all those characters in mind, it's really hard to write them and give them their special moments because the movie is so clustered. It ends up feeling like a TV show where there's different plot lines and then it all connects at the end, which again, I just like seeing the Avengers together, all in one piece, and all going through the same thing. What I like about this movie, it's not super action-packed, so we get real character moments with all of them. We get to see them, go to Hawkeye's wife's ranch, where we see them just, chopping wood, eating dinner, doing stuff around the farm, and just chilling because, again, a lot of things happen after they fight in Wakanda. There's a lot of chaos in this world, so even in the Avengers movie, they can just, chill for a little bit, and that's really comfortable to see in a movie. And it also just brings them humanity, because these guys, obviously they have cool powers and all, but most of them, again, are just human at the end of the day. And they have been given this gift and a curse, and there's a lot of pressure to deal with, especially with the stakes that Ultron is putting them through. You are fighting against an AI robot that has the intelligence of Tony Stark, Jarvis, and is evil. And, it's got a little bit of Hydra in it too, so this is their biggest threat yet, and you can really feel it in this movie. Another thing I like is because of Wanda's powers, seeing those illusions, Tony doesn't only get them, but in the rest of the movie, Hulk gets them, Steve Rogers gets them, and then Black Widow gets them. So they, go through a lot of stuff, and you can actually see their backstory. I really love seeing Captain America going back to the 1940s and seeing Peggy, and just, it was really kind of horrifying. And then obviously with Black Widow, you see her traumatizing past of how she, became the Black Widow. And this film is not all too serious. It does have some really funny moments, especially when they're at the Avengers Tower and they're all chilling, trying to lift up Thor's hammer. That's one of my favorite scenes. With the illusions and with the stakes, this film can be kind of scary, and I like seeing a little bit of horror in, Avengers movie. You got to balance all the tones because you got so much stuff going on. And with adding that horror and reality of it, it just makes it all the more intense, and you actually feel the stakes of this movie. Because again, with the whole Sokovia destruction, you are seeing a whole city being lifted off the ground, and that's not normal. So the Avengers really prepare for that, and you can see them evacuating citizens and saving citizens to save people. That's all it's about. It's saving humanity. Man of Steel, you need to take some notes because you ain't saving people. The destruction, it's an actual real thing that is at stake. So it's not just, a thing thrown in the background like a lot of destruction movies happen to be. There's actually people here who are, needing to be saved. So I really appreciate this movie for doing that. And what I like about this film, just like the first one, it's very political. Ultron is just a combination of all the bad in humanity, and having to stop that, it's really not that easy. The Avengers go through trial and tribulations to get this done, and that's when you see them really just working at their best. It's not easy, and that's what I like about this movie. I just prefer this over most of the Avengers movies. And again, I think Infinity War is my favorite Avengers movie, and just honestly one of my favorite Marvel movies ever because of that ending. But there's just something about this evil sentient being that is just so much more, it's a harder reality to swallow rather than seeing Purple Zaddy. And again, it makes it all this scary considering what's been happening over the past month with all the planes crashing, and then obviously last year with the Microsoft shutdowns. Again, we have all these corporations with these monopolies that are controlling everything, and yet if something goes bad with one of them, it's a domino effect and everything will collapse. So we got to think about saving humanity. And this film came out 10 years ago, and it's all the relevant now, which just, again, it ages like fine wine. What I realized when watching this film is that Marvel really did lose its simplicity. I feel like now, because the fan base has gotten so big, it's become kind of more of a niche, and that's why their box office has been falling, because again, they're doing more niche characters, but they're not making it appealing to the public. Now, I'm excited for the new Captain America movie, Thunderbolts, and Fantastic Four. I think the Fantastic Four movie specifically looks like the next best team-up movie, so I'm really excited for that. But other than that, their main, timeline story with, Avengers Doomsday and what they're setting up is, I don't know. I just don't think it's going to, hit as hard as it should. Because again, they are setting up Secret Wars and, possibly the most biggest cinematic event ever, and it doesn't even feel like that. Because again, when these movies came out, you felt the build-up, you felt the organization, and that's currently lacking right now based on all the projects they had to churn out. Now, I appreciate the frick out of Kevin Feige because he's been slowing down on production of Marvel movies. So, we're actually getting some quality, it seems like. I mean, despite what you can say about Deadpool and Wolverine, at least they just released that movie last year and not some other crap. But again, Marvel has just kind of fallen off with the quality, whether it's with the VFX or the color. It's just, not looking like a proper movie. Whereas this one, yeah, it has some bad CGI here and there, because again, that's from 2015, keep in mind. But the whole movie with the way Hulk looks, Ultron, it's really good CGI. And I think, eventually in the 2010s, everyone's been saying, but we reached a peak with CGI. And this film looks really good to this day. I don't think the directing in this movie is very good. I think the VFX back then and how much hard work they put into these movies really just kind of save it. So a lot of things that, are not really shot well still look good, because again, you can't just help but looking at the bad CGI. It's kind of like with Michael Bay's directing with Transformers, because you can't deny the great CGI from them. I also like Age of Ultron because it comes in my favorite run of Avengers movies, or I would say just like Marvel movies in general, where it was Winter Soldier, Age of Ultron, and Civil War, because that 3-movie run is legendary. I think it's when it's the most intense. I think it's the best turn towards this franchise, and it just feels the best because I love the way, again, 2010 movies feel, because that's what I grew up watching. That's like my standard of watching movies. And look, Ultron is him. He is the main saving grace of this movie. And I think so because of a James Spader's voice. He does such a good job of being menacing, but also, kind of being charismatic. He's like Tony Stark meets Hydra, meets everything evil in this world. Now, I'm not saying Tony Stark's evil, but his charisma can really change how people think, and he's a very smart man, and Ultron having those capabilities makes us all the dangerous. Which begs the question, Tony Stark's Doctor Doom is going to be probably the most menacing character ever. I'm not sure how I feel about Marvel bringing back all these characters for their upcoming movie, but we will have to see. And Ultron just has so much aura. You really do feel his fear in any scene he's speaking in, and just the dialogue they gave him was really good. Now, for the other characters' dialogue in this film, not so good. I think Joss Whedon just doesn't know how to write a proper script. I think the other writers on the movie probably did the more better scenes, because again, there is good dialogue in here. We got like Steve and Tony arguing at the farm. I really like the scene where Tony's again arguing with the team when they are discussing, whether they should build Ultron or not. And ultimately, he was wrong, but at the same time, he's right. There is that greater threat out there, which they would come to learn in Infinity War, which, just again, another great dialogue scene. Nothing beats a killer robot. Now, the only reason why this movie, I guess, gets a lot of hate is because Ultron's only in this movie, but he really does make his presence known, and that's why it pisses off fans. If Ultron was still around, with Thanos in mind, it would just be too much for the Avengers to handle. Now, they can bring him back, and I really hope they do, as we've heard rumblings. I want to talk about the criticisms I have with the film, because again, this isn't a perfect movie. No Marvel movie is, unfortunately. Joss Whedon is a POS. He definitely sexualizes women in all of his films, especially with Gal Gadot and Justice League, where he's just showing pictures of her butt. And then obviously in this movie, we have Hulk randomly having a love arc with Scarlett Johansson in the Avengers Tower when Ultron is, murking everybody. He just falls over on her boobs. Like, who wrote that in there? Joss Whedon. When he took over for Zack Snyder's Justice League, he did all the butt shots and he did some weird, sexual stuff. And I think that literally what happened to Flash in the scene where they are fighting against Steppenwolf, and he just falls into Gal Gadot's boobs. So this guy's just obsessed with sexualizing women. There's also a article from Vulture saying that he obviously did those things in the movie where Ray Fisher and Gal Gadot spoke out about how he mistreats his cast. In the Buffy series, he was cheating on his wife and I think sexualizing the cast. You can read that whole article. I don't need to explain it because, again, I feel like every film I talk about has some sort of director or correlation to some sort of, bad person in Hollywood. But, that's just Hollywood for you. And a lot of people think this film is just lacking a lot of substance. I have to disagree with you. You get some of the greatest moments in all of the MCU. You get the Hulkbuster battle with Hulk. You get to see, a lot of different places. Sokovia, Wakanda, New York. This is the most you also see of the Avengers Tower. And that's the Avengers headquarters. Please, let's just live there. We get to see, some nature and slow down, which, again, I can't stop talking about how much I love this scene on Hawkeye's ranch. It truly shows that family dynamic. As much as there can be so many threats and all these characters and all this comic book lore, at the end of the day, this is a family fighting together. And that just makes my heart warm. You also get new characters, again, like Ulysses, the arms dealer, who would be in Black Panther, Quicksilver. We'll have to talk about that. Wanda, Vision, and then obviously Ultron. With Quicksilver's death, I think that's another big criticism with this film. I don't really mind it because, again, I didn't really care for Aaron Taylor Johnson's performance, period. But he is a cool character, and the MCU just kind of wasted him. And then when they bring him back in WandaVision, it's Ralph Bohner. Look, if you have expectations for movies, they're just not going to meet. You're going to end up hating every movie you watch. And with this movie, from what I've told you, just keep in mind, again, this is not the best movie you'll ever see, but it's a damn good one. And I really think you will find enjoyment when watching it. And like I said, over the 10-year period, this has aged extremely well. I can't stress it enough, especially with all the discussions of AI. And like I said again, the directing is not quite the best in this movie. It's nothing flashy. It's nothing good. Joss Whedon's not a good director. It's just, Kevin Feige and the VFX team and, the actors in this movie really just, again, complement it to make it seem like Joss Whedon directed something really good. I mean, you can look at the first Avengers movie and think that he did a good job with that, but I'm looking at this film by itself, and I mean, I really like it. I prefer it over the first movie, and obviously it wasn't Joss Whedon's best efforts, but it's just seeing this cast together in such an original time before everything changes is just something truly special. And I think it's just because now that they're gone, and I look back on this film, it's sad, but again, it's such a beautiful thing to live in. I like living in my movies. I love feeling immersed in my movies, and this film just does that. It's just very comfortable and just looks really good. And if you saw that in theaters, it would be quite epic seeing all these characters fight together. This film's definitely an 8 out of 10. I would even rate it higher, but let's just stick to 8 out of 10 for now. This film was very special to me, and honestly, it's probably what developed me to really like movies. And this was the pick of the day, Avengers: Age of Ultron. Please watch it if you can. It's on Disney+. Get it on Blu-ray. You can probably get it for $2 with just the regular Blu-ray. Or again, if you want to be cool like me, please get the Steelbook because physical media is awesome. Everyone, enjoy the ride.